Personal development is the foundation of all success because everything you achieve externally is first created internally. Before results show up in your life, they are formed in your mindset, habits, and beliefs. Success is not an event that happens to you. It is a process that unfolds through who you are becoming. When you invest in your personal growth, you strengthen the root that supports every visible outcome, whether it is career progress, financial stability, or meaningful relationships. When personal development is neglected, progress becomes fragile and inconsistent. Skills may exist, but discipline is weak. Opportunities may appear, but confidence is missing. Without inner growth, success feels temporary and stressful because it is not supported by a strong internal structure. Personal development creates emotional stability, mental clarity, and the ability to handle pressure without breaking under it. Every level of success requires a higher level of thinking. The thoughts that created your current results cannot create your next level. Personal development challenges outdated beliefs and replaces them with empowering perspectives. It teaches you to question limitations, reframe failure, and view challenges as training rather than punishment. As your thinking expands, your decisions improve, and improved decisions create better outcomes. Consistency in personal development builds momentum that compounds over time. Small daily improvements in mindset, discipline, and skill may seem insignificant, but they accumulate into massive transformation. Reading a few pages, reflecting on behavior, practicing self-control, and learning from mistakes all contribute to long-term success. Growth does not happen overnight, but it becomes inevitable when effort is applied daily. Personal development strengthens self-awareness, which is essential for leadership and influence. Understanding your strengths, weaknesses, triggers, and tendencies allows you to operate intentionally rather than emotionally. When you know yourself, you stop reacting impulsively and start responding strategically. This awareness leads to better communication, stronger relationships, and increased credibility in every environment. Success without personal development often leads to burnout or self-sabotage. Without emotional maturity and internal discipline, pressure exposes weaknesses rather than strength. Personal growth prepares you to sustain success by teaching patience, resilience, and self-regulation. It enables you to stay grounded when things go well and focused when things go wrong. Developing yourself also increases your value in the marketplace. Income and opportunity are reflections of the problems you can solve and the responsibility you can handle. Personal development sharpens skills, expands perspective, and improves execution. As your value increases, demand naturally follows, opening doors that were previously unavailable. Personal development teaches ownership over outcomes instead of blaming circumstances, people, or timing. Growth-oriented individuals take responsibility for their actions and results. This mindset shift is powerful because it restores control. When you own your growth, you gain the ability to change direction, correct mistakes, and build momentum regardless of external conditions. Inner growth creates confidence that is not dependent on validation. Confidence built through personal development comes from preparation, discipline, and self-respect. It allows you to move forward even when approval is absent and uncertainty is present. This internal confidence fuels bold action and sustained effort, which are essential components of achievement. Personal development aligns daily behavior with long-term vision. It helps you prioritize growth over comfort and progress over distraction. Through continuous self-improvement, you become intentional about how you use your time, energy, and focus, creating a strong internal foundation that supports consistent advancement and higher standards in every area of life. Responsibility creates power because the moment you stop blaming and start owning your life, you regain control over your future. When you accept responsibility, you are no longer at the mercy of circumstances, people, or luck. You move from a position of reaction to a position of creation. Power begins where excuses end, and responsibility is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Taking responsibility means recognizing that your results are connected to your choices, not your intentions. Many people mean well, but live poorly because they refuse to own their decisions. Responsibility forces clarity. It strips away denial and replaces it with awareness. When you see clearly, you can correct course. When you avoid responsibility, you repeat the same patterns while hoping for different outcomes. Responsibility creates power because it shifts your mindset from victimhood to leadership. A victim waits for conditions to improve, but a leader improves themselves regardless of conditions. When you take responsibility, you stop asking who is at fault and start asking what can be done. That question alone opens doors to solutions, growth, and progress. Owning responsibility builds self-respect. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, take action despite fear, or admit when you are wrong, you strengthen your inner authority. Power is not loud. It is quiet confidence built through consistent ownership. People who take responsibility trust themselves because they know they will do what needs to be done. Responsibility also sharpens discipline. When you accept that no one else is coming to rescue you, your standards rise. You become more intentional with your time, your energy, and your decisions. Discipline is no longer punishment. It becomes self-leadership. Through responsibility, you develop the ability to direct your life instead of drifting through it. When responsibility is embraced, excuses lose their grip. Excuses feel comforting in the moment, but expensive in the long run. Responsibility may feel heavy at first, but it becomes empowering over time. It teaches you that even when you cannot control events, you can control your response, and your response determines your direction. Responsibility creates power by turning problems into training grounds. Challenges stop being obstacles and start becoming opportunities for growth. Every setback becomes feedback. Every failure becomes instruction. When you take responsibility, nothing is wasted because everything teaches you how to become stronger, wiser, and more capable. Personal growth accelerates when responsibility becomes a habit. You stop outsourcing your happiness, success, and fulfillment to external factors. You realize that progress is an inside job. The more responsibility you take, the more capacity you build. Capacity expands confidence, and confidence fuels action. Responsibility also earns trust from yourself and from others. People are drawn to those who own their outcomes and stand firm in their commitments. Trust multiplies influence, and influence multiplies impact. Responsibility quietly positions you as someone reliable, capable, and grounded. True power is not dominance over others. It is mastery over self. Responsibility is the foundation of that mastery. When you accept full ownership of your life, your thoughts, and your actions, you unlock the ability to shape your future with intention, consistency, and purpose. Focus determines direction because whatever consistently holds your attention quietly shapes your decisions, your habits, and ultimately your destination. The mind moves toward what it repeatedly observes, and over time, those observations become beliefs, expectations, and patterns of behavior. When focus is scattered, progress becomes accidental. But when focus is deliberate, outcomes become intentional. Life does not drift toward excellence. It flows toward whatever you give your attention to most. Every action begins as a thought, and every thought is fueled by focus. If your focus is dominated by problems, distractions, or comparisons, your actions will reflect confusion and hesitation. When focus is placed on growth, learning, and execution, your actions gain clarity and momentum. Direction is not decided in dramatic moments, but in the quiet daily choice of what you allow to occupy your mind. Focus filters reality. Two people can experience the same environment, the same challenges, and the same opportunities, yet move in completely different directions based on what they focus on. One sees obstacles and retreats. The other sees lessons and advances. Focus does not change circumstances, but it changes interpretation, and interpretation determines response. A distracted mind is a divided mind, and a divided mind cannot move forward with strength. When attention is constantly pulled in multiple directions, energy leaks away, progress slows, confidence weakens, and purpose becomes unclear. Direction requires alignment, and alignment only happens when focus is narrowed to what truly matters. Focus also determines what you grow. Attention is like water to a seed. Whatever you water consistently will expand. When focus is placed on fear, fear multiplies. When focus is placed on discipline, discipline strengthens. You cannot starve distractions while feeding them with attention. Growth follows focus without exception. Long-term success is the result of sustained focus over time. Talent without focus creates inconsistency, while average ability with deep focus creates mastery. The difference between those who achieve extraordinary results and those who stay stuck is not intelligence, luck, or opportunity, but the ability to hold attention on the right priorities despite discomfort and delay. Focus brings clarity to decision-making. When you know what matters most, choices become simpler. You stop saying yes to what drains you and start saying no to what distracts you. Direction sharpens when focus eliminates noise, and progress accelerates when energy is no longer wasted on what does not align with purpose. External noise is constant, but internal focus is a choice. The world will always compete for attention, offering urgency without importance. Without control over focus, direction is surrendered to trends, opinions, and emotional reactions. Those who decide their direction must first decide what they will consistently focus on. Focus builds momentum because repeated attention creates familiarity, and familiarity builds confidence. What once felt difficult becomes natural through repetition. Direction becomes easier to maintain when focus transforms effort into habit and habit into identity. Over time, who you are aligns with what you repeatedly focus on. Where your life goes tomorrow is being decided by where your attention rests today. Direction is not chosen once, it is reinforced daily by focus, strengthened by discipline, and sustained by intention. The future unfolds along the path carved by repeated attention, shaped by the thoughts you return to, the priorities wise you protect, and the focus you refuse to surrender. Consistency beats talent because talent without discipline is unreliable, unpredictable, and often wasted. Natural ability may create early advantages, but without consistent effort, those advantages fade over time. Talent might open a door, but consistency is what keeps it open. The world is filled with gifted people who never reach their potential, not because they lacked ability, but because they lacked the discipline to show up every day and do the work. Consistency builds trust, first with yourself, then with others. When you repeatedly take action, even on days you feel unmotivated, you prove to yourself that you can be depended on. That self-trust becomes confidence, and confidence fuels momentum. Talent may impress people once, but consistency earns respect over time because it demonstrates reliability and commitment. Small actions performed daily compound into massive results. What seems insignificant today becomes powerful tomorrow when repeated without interruption. A little progress made consistently will always outperform sporadic bursts of effort fueled by inspiration. Consistency transforms ordinary actions into extraordinary outcomes through repetition and patience. Talent often relies on motivation, but consistency relies on systems and habits. Motivation is emotional and temporary, while habits are structural and stable. When you build routines that support growth, you remove the need to feel inspired before taking action. Consistency allows you to perform even when conditions are imperfect and energy is low. People who rely on talent often quit when things become difficult because they are not used to resistance. Consistent individuals expect resistance and move forward anyway. They understand that struggle is not a signal to stop, but a signal that growth is happening. Over time, this resilience becomes a competitive advantage that talent alone cannot replicate. Consistency sharpens skill. Repetition refines execution. Every time you practice, you improve your judgment, timing, and awareness. Talent may give you a head start, but consistency allows you to master the fundamentals, and mastery always outperforms raw ability in the long run. Success rewards persistence more than brilliance. The person who keeps going after failures, setbacks, and slow progress will always surpass the person who stops when results don't come quickly. Consistency turns failure into feedback and obstacles into experience, strengthening your capacity with each attempt. Talent can create shortcuts, but consistency creates endurance. When challenges escalate, endurance becomes more valuable than ability. The consistent person doesn't need perfect conditions to perform. They perform because it's who they have trained themselves to be through daily action. Over time, consistency reshapes identity. When you repeatedly act with discipline, you begin to see yourself as disciplined. That identity reinforces behavior, creating a powerful loop of growth. You stop negotiating with yourself and start executing automatically because consistency has become part of who you are. In the end, consistency is the great equalizer. It allows ordinary people to achieve extraordinary results by refusing to quit, refusing to drift, and refusing to depend on talent alone. Self-image shapes outcomes because every decision you make is filtered through how you see yourself. When you believe you are capable, disciplined, and worthy, your actions naturally rise to match that belief. When you see yourself as limited or undeserving, you unconsciously sabotage opportunities before they fully form. Your self-image operates like an internal thermostat, regulating how much success, growth, and responsibility you allow yourself to experience. Most people are not held back by lack of opportunity, but by outdated internal stories. These stories are often formed early, reinforced by past failures, criticism, or comparison. Over time, they harden into identity. Once something becomes part of your identity, you defend it, even if it keeps you stuck. Changing outcomes requires changing the story you tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of handling. Your behavior always aligns with your self-image. If you see yourself as someone who quits when things get hard, you will find reasons to stop. If you see yourself as someone who finishes what they start, persistence becomes automatic. Willpower struggles disappear when actions match identity. You don't rise by forcing better habits. You rise by becoming the type of person for whom those habits are normal. Confidence is not arrogance. It is clarity about your own value. When your self-image is healthy, you stop seeking validation and start seeking mastery. You no longer need permission to act because you trust your judgment. This internal alignment creates decisiveness, and decisiveness creates momentum. People with strong self-images move faster because they spend less time doubting themselves. A weak self-image makes you reactive. You avoid challenges that might expose perceived flaws. You play small to stay safe. But safety is an illusion when it costs you growth. A strong self-image allows you to face discomfort without interpreting it as a personal failure. Challenges become feedback instead of threats, and setbacks become lessons instead of labels. Your self-image is shaped by what you repeatedly focus on. The thoughts you rehearse, the language you use, and the standards you accept all contribute to how you see yourself. If you constantly remind yourself of what you lack, you reinforce limitation. If you consistently acknowledge effort, progress, and discipline, you reinforce capability. Identity is built through repetition, not motivation. Environment also plays a role in shaping self-image. The people you listen to, the conversations you engage in, and the expectations around you either stretch or shrink your perception of yourself. When you surround yourself with growth-oriented thinking, you begin to normalize higher standards. Exposure rewrites identity. What once felt intimidating eventually feels attainable. Self-image is not about pretending, it's about practicing. You become who you repeatedly act like. Each small promise you keep to yourself strengthens trust. Each disciplined choice reinforces a new identity. Over time, these micro decisions compound into a powerful internal belief system that supports higher level outcomes. Success does not create a strong self-image. A strong self-image creates success. Results are the echo, not the source. When you upgrade how you see yourself, your goals stop feeling unrealistic and start feeling inevitable. The gap between where you are and where you want to be begins to close because your actions finally align with your potential. The moment you take control of your self-image, you take control of your trajectory. You stop outsourcing confidence to circumstances and start generating it from within. Growth accelerates when your internal identity matches the future you're building. And every step forward reinforces the belief that you belong at the next level. Action is non-negotiable. Expand it and don't add any ending sentence and make it lengthy and 10 paragraph without heading and conclusion. Action is non-negotiable because nothing changes without movement and no breakthrough happens while standing still. Ideas remain powerless until they are executed, and intentions mean nothing without behavior to support them. Why? All can think, plan, analyze, and visualize endlessly, but without action, all of it stays theoretical. Progress only responds to motion, and life only rewards those who are willing to step forward before they feel ready. Waiting for perfect conditions is one of the most common ways people delay their destiny. Clarity does not come before action. Clarity comes from action. Each step taken reveals the next one, and each decision made sharpens judgment. Growth happens in motion, not in hesitation, and confidence is built by doing, not by waiting until fear disappears. Action forces responsibility. The moment you act, you take ownership of the outcome, whether it succeeds or fails. This ownership creates awareness, and awareness creates growth. Mistakes become lessons. Resistance becomes feedback, and obstacles become instruction. Without action, there is no data, no correction, and no evolution. Discipline is action repeated, not emotion felt. Motivation rises and falls, but action anchored in commitment creates momentum. When you act regardless of how you feel, you train yourself to operate at a higher standard. This consistency rewires identity, transforming effort into habit and habit into character. Over time, what once felt difficult becomes automatic. Action exposes truth. It reveals what works and what doesn't, what you know and what you still need to learn. Talking creates comfort, but action creates results. Execution removes self-deception and replaces it with reality. It forces alignment between belief and behavior, eliminating excuses that survive only in inaction. Opportunities favor those who move. The world responds to speed, decisiveness, and initiative. Those who act are seen, trusted, and chosen more often than those who wait. Momentum attracts resources, people, and possibilities that remain invisible to the inactive. Movement signals readiness, A. ND readiness invites opportunity. Fear loses power in the presence of action. The longer you delay, the louder fear becomes, but the moment you move, fear begins to shrink. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is action in spite of it. Every step forward weakens doubt and strengthens belief through evidence. Action compounds. Small steps taken daily create massive distance over time. One decision, one habit, one execution at a time builds a trajectory that separates leaders from spectators. The gap between success and stagnation is rarely intelligence or talent. It is the willingness to act consistently. Comfort resists action because action demands growth. Staying still feels safe, but safety is expensive when it costs progress. Discomfort is not a signal to stop. It is proof that expansion is happening. Those who embrace action accept temporary discomfort in exchange for long-term strength. Nothing meaningful is achieved through passive intention. Life does not reward what you mean to do, only what you actually do. Action is the bridge between potential and reality, and without crossing it, even the greatest ability remains unused.